So months after the release of Persona 3 Reload, Atlus released the expansion pass that remakes the Persona 3 FES epilogue titled The Answer. And whoo boy, does it have some pretty terrible Steam reviews. We will read some of those later, but for now I'm just gonna give my opinion. I also did play this live on Twitch, twitch.tv/IamXKami. Please go follow me. And I think I finished it in like 4 to 5 days, but that was mainly because I was streaming. So if you probably play it by yourself, you might finish it in like 20 to 30 hours. Now, I'm not gonna go over the entire story. However, I do need to give context to some things, mainly so you have an idea as to how I feel about the game. So everything that I'm gonna go over, you're gonna learn in like the first hour of the game. But if you wanna go completely blind, then you can skip to this timestamp. But anyway, so a couple of weeks after the ending of the main storyline, the team is preparing to move out of the dorm. However, once the clock reached midnight, the dark hour returns. Nah, I'm just playing. Instead, you're trapped in a never-ending March 31st. Now, following Aigis as the protagonist, the team goes to sleep hoping that the next day is different. However, in the morning, there's a whole lot of chaos. Long story short, you meet this new character called Metis. Metis claims to be Aigis' sister, and she really likes to say the word sister.
I'll always give my all for my sister. I get to be with my sister. No one can stop me and my sister. That was great, sister.
Then eventually you enter this place called the Abyss of Time. And pretty much if I had to summarize the Abyss of Time, it's essentially Tartarus with really strong ass gatekeepers and a little bit of story here and there. I'm not gonna talk about the story here because that's not what I'm here to do. However, all you need to know is that the Abyss of Time is pretty much linked to like the memories and pretty much all the past memories and feelings of all the C's members. But anyways, there is this constant figure that you see. How do I best explain it without giving spoilers? Oh, I know. If you know, you know. Anyways, if you use your save file from the main storyline to start episode Aigis, I think that the only thing that carries over is your compendium. However, there's actually 2 compendiums. One is for Aigis, and I think it has like all the personas up to level 25 already registered. And you also have the main storyline compendium. However, it does cost quite a hefty fee to take personas out. Of course, you also have to be of level to take them out. Oh, and by the way, if you registered your DLC personas, you can't take them out until you're of level. So no taking out your strong Cendrillon build early in the game. But anyways, you go through doors, do different floor levels, take care of gatekeepers, do that 2 to 3 more times and you get a bit of story, and then you rinse and repeat that process. Oh, and after fighting the gatekeepers, there is some lock chests you can open. Some of them contain items that allow you to hang out with the party members, kinda how you could in the main storyline. However, this actually brings me to my first problem. For these sections, there is no voice acting. There is voice acting for pretty much any important story part. However, when you hang out with the team members, there's absolutely no voice acting. Now, I'm confident that most of us here can actually read, so it's not really much of a problem. However, this ties into the biggest problem that everybody has, so we'll talk more about that later. But I was kind of disappointed when I realized that these sections were not voice acted. And pretty much one of my biggest problems was the grinding. Now, for the 2 to 3 people that have been following my playthrough of the main storyline, you'll notice that pretty much late in the day I would stream and just grind Tartarus. Now, I didn't really mind this because I actually quite enjoyed doing that, and it was more optional. You weren't really forced to grind. However, in this game, you really have to grind. I believe like my second day streaming, I was trying to push forward and I couldn't, like I kept dying. Now, I am no Persona professional. I'm pretty bad. I mean, in the ending fight, of course, I won't show it. I kept using attacks that the enemy repelled, which I don't know why. I'm just stupid, okay? But even then, like, I didn't die that many times in the main storyline. But here, it was actually quite difficult. Now, Monad doors do have a return in this game, and they're actually quite different. They're separated in 3 levels ranging in difficulty, the left one being the easiest and the right one being the hardest. And I believe I was grinding like the right Monad doors like for like 2 to 3 hours just to be decently strong enough to fight the next gatekeeper. So when I say there's a lot of grinding, there is a lot of grinding. Now, of course, there's one way to circumvent this, and that is pretty much beating the Reaper. The Reaper does spawn, and if you could somehow manage to beat him, then, well, you should be fine. In fact, if you're over leveled as early as you possibly can, you can probably finish the entire game that same day. But yeah, when I say that you have to grind, you actually have to grind. That is not an option. And that's kind of one of the problems, like it's really just grinding. That's really what it is, with just at most 5 minutes of story. The only times that you get the most amount of story is the beginning and the end, and in fact I would say the end is pretty good. I actually quite like the end. It really shows more of the characters. I would say that it reveals a bit more as to how, well, I won't spoil it if you haven't played the main storyline, but it explains why the main storyline ended a bit later than it should have. Does that make sense? If you played it, you know what I mean. But besides that, I mean, you're just grinding, going through floors like Tartarus, but just like a bit of story here and there. And the story that you see is really not that important. Again, like, it's just a bit of extra context. So it's not like one of those things where you have to play it after completing the main storyline. It really is just optional. And well, this leads me to my answer. The answer to the video's title. Is it worth to buy episode Aigis? I would say no, it is not worth it. And the reason is not really much of the content, it's more about the price. So if you try buying episode Aigis right now on Steam, it would cost you $35. Now, I actually bought it when it was on sale. I think it was like $22, $25. I'll show the receipt on screen so you can see how much it was. But even on sale, I just don't think it's worth it. As much as I actually quite really like the ending and the final boss looks actually pretty cool, even then, I'll be honest, like, it's just not something that you should be paying $22 to $25, let alone $35. It is just not worth that price.
Like, if you're a broke boy, just say so. Yeah.
Like, in my opinion, at most, it should have been $15, maybe on sale $12. I honestly think that's a fair price for what you get. If the game was like $10 to $15, I wouldn't be so picky about the lack of voice acting. I wouldn't be picky about, you know, the whole Tartarus grind. It's fine because it would have just been cheap. But because it's like $35 full price, I mean, picture this. If you bought the digital premium version of Persona 3 Reload, which by the way, you do need Persona 3 Reload to play episode Aigis, obviously. So if you buy the digital premium edition plus the expansion pass, that will run you $135. I love when there's airplanes. So it genuinely is not cheap at all. And that's honestly probably the biggest problem with everybody. It's just not worth the price. So honestly, unless you really are invested in the characters and you want to get just that extra bit of story that's really not that worth it, you can get it when it's on sale, but unless it drops to $15, I just can't recommend it to you. Honestly, if you really want to see what happens, I would recommend going to YouTube and watching all the cutscenes. You can also just watch someone's playthrough. I mean, I have a playthrough. I'll be leaving a link to the playlist of my playthrough in the description. I pretty much only show story bits and just the battles with the gatekeepers. That's if you're interested in watching it. It would help me out. However, you can search up all the cutscenes and that's pretty much all you have to do. Also, one thing that kind of bothered me, obviously I can't show it because it's a huge spoiler, but you know the figure we were talking about earlier, the ghost? Yeah, so that figure appears, you battle the figure, then disappears, and when it disappears there's this anime cutscene. So there is anime cutscenes and they actually look pretty good. Also, I forgot to mention the opening is also pretty good. I do prefer the music of the Persona 3 Reload opening. However, the animation for the episode Aigis opening is really good. I recommend watching it. But anyways, the FES version of this cutscene was also animated. I won't lie to you, the FES did it better, and it kind of sucks that we didn't get to see something like that in the remake, because I'm confident it would have looked really good. Once you get to that one specific part and you know what I'm talking about, I recommend searching the FES version and you'll see what I mean. Okay, let's read some Steam reviews. So you can see here they're mostly negative. That's not really good. They're not even mixed. They're mostly negative. So let's read this one by Enotica. Do you like the dungeon grinding from the original game? Buy this, you will have a blast. Do you want to experience an epilogue to the previous story with RPG mechanics revoked? Then episode Aigis is for you. For only 53 AUD, which I don't know what currency that is, you too can experience what it's like to waste your money on an expansion that leaves little to the imagination. I urge everyone that if you just want to see what happens post Persona 3 Reload ending, there is a way to do that all, no charge at all. It's called YouTube, or a wiki if you like reading. Please do not waste your money on this overpriced nothing burger for DLC. Only purchase this if you're completely fine with doing the same dungeon system. Then just wait for it to go on sale. I don't think it's worth the asking price. The best part about this is the ending, but to get that ending is completely whatever that is. For example, besides the constant grinding you have to do once you're about to finish the game, you have to, and yeah, I won't be reading that because it has spoilers. Overall, I'd say story wise it's a 7 out of 10, but the pricing brings it down in addition to repetitive gameplay to around 2 out of 10. Damn. Only get this if you're mentally ill and just want to see Aigis again. I love Aigis, but the dungeon sucks. Robo Guard, what? Whatever that means. We're using 3 maps. It's actually 4. Yeah, but it's still pretty bad. on over 100 floors, horrifically grinding and having no social link boost. Pay the $20 to see Aigis again and don't expect anything phenomenal except Aigis, because Aigis is Aigis and Kimi one. What does that mean? I'm not gonna read that because it could mean something bad. Bro really hated this. Absolute farce this wasn't part of the premium edition. Completely greedy corporate nonsense. I like Tartarus, I like the combat, the pricing scheme is criminal. I have to agree there, Danny Callis. Also, I know there's good reviews. Right now I'm just kind of reading the bad reviews just to see what people think, but I do want to make this fair, so let's read a good review. I actually enjoyed this DLC. It's just Tartarus exploration is quite tiring. So that's a good review, and even they agreed that it's a lot of grinding. Noob's Car. This DLC was a banger too. I enjoyed all the content. The story was amazing and still sad. 100 out of 10. Definitely get this. So hey, Noob's Car thinks that you should get it. So this person received the product for free, which by the way, how do you do that? I want that. Alt Retro Dude got this for free and they said absolute miserable gaming experience. It's just Tartarus for 200 plus floors with a couple of mad cutscenes kinda showing off the character's past. The story is trying to tell is good, but damn, the gameplay is awful. Just watch the cutscenes on YouTube. Literally 2 people already are saying exactly what I said. I'm recording this and I'm reading these Steam reviews after I recorded what I had to say. I saw that it had negative reviews on Steam before I played it, but I didn't actually want to read them just because I wanted to experience it myself. You know, I wanted to see maybe I think it's different. I mean, they pretty much are just saying the same thing that I'm saying. But yeah, honestly, that's a lot of negative reviews. But yeah, it seems like a lot of people have the same similar type of problems that I do. You know, the price, the grindiness is just not worth it for a lot of people, and fair, it just generally is not. I mean, like I said, watch a gameplay or just watch the cutscenes. You know, watch my gameplay, please. So long story short, Tartarus grind, a lot of grinding, little story, too much sister, and overpriced. So yeah, I mean, I think the story was good, and like I said, I also like the ending. The animations were also pretty good, and yeah, that's pretty much it. I just wanted to give my opinions on it. I like the story, but the price, no bueno. With that being said, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps out my channel. I mean, I'm a small creator. If you want to see me live, it's the very first link in the description. Have a fantastic day.